what's up, man?
Hey, I'm all right. How are you?
I'm doing good, my friend.
Good, good, good. Where are you at the moment?
I am in Lancaster, Pennsylvania for our second show uh, since the pandemic. So it's exciting to get back out there.
I bet it's exciting. So tell me how you felt like, was it last night, the first show?
Yeah, yesterday we played Incarceration Festival. It was really cool. Huge crowd, lively audience. Was a great way to get back out there.
It's like walking onto that stage for the first time after what's happened. How did that feel for you last night?
It felt like a triumphant return. I mean, it's just like we've sort of, like everybody else in the world, have been sort of rerouted to different programming, so to speak, and to get back to what we love doing the most was just an incredible feeling, and to do it in that sort of grand fashion with such a large festival and large crowd and huge stage. It was great.
Yeah. And do you feel like people are appreciating the live experience more than ever now because of how things have been?
I think it's too early for me to make that statement just yet, just because it's only the second show tonight. But if yesterday was any indication, I would say 100%, man. Seems like everyone is just starving to get back to some sort of normalcy in terms of concerts.
Yeah. And I feel like Ice Nine Kills are, the kind of band that when you go out on stage, you're never going to go just through the motions. Do you always feel like, even if maybe you're not quite in the mood, that you always have to like take it to the next level?
Yeah, I think just that's inherently what we try to do. We want to put on a great show for people, beyond just the music, and that's why we put a lot of attention to detailing with, like, costumes and masks and stage production. So I think that we always try to give it 110, no matter what the circumstances are. We have to.
You have to, yeah. I certainly wouldn't want to be a band that goes on after your band necessarily. I think you always like take the levels up a notch, and like you say, it's not just about the music for you guys. There's always been that theatrical element to everything you do, and obviously especially with the videos and the artwork for everything. Was that always the plan from day one? I know that you were quite a different band when you first started out, but did you always want to have that kind of cinematic theatrical element to what you do?
I don't think necessarily from the very beginning of when I started the band. We were more of like a punk band originally, ska and punk.
Yeah.
And but the thing was, I always loved movies so much. That was like neck and neck with my love of music. And I think it was just that sort of natural progression, when I was thinking, what can we do that we haven't done yet that could be really fun? And the idea of theming it around things that I really loved from my childhood. It just felt like, wow, this could be really fun to create, and hopefully it's fun to enjoy. And I'm, just glad to see that it ended up working out, not just only for my own pleasure, but for our fans too. So it's just that kind of that perfect marriage for me of the two things that I liked the most.
And do you feel any kind of pressure, like to always keep up in the ante with the way you do things? Because everything that you've done so far, like especially over the last few years, has been so on point and so deliberate. It must be hard to kind of keep coming up with new ideas and kind of pushing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think any band, if you have some success on with a certain style or a certain record, I think there's that element of pressure, that you want to make sure that what you do next is as good as the first time you did it. Just like in movies, that you hope the sequel lives up to the original. But for me, it's just like I think that's always in the back of my head. But at the same time, I'm just wanting to make something as cool as possible, something that I would think was cool. And yeah, I think there's definitely an element of like, what can we do here that's even crazier? What can we do here that's that's weird or different, or a different style that people wouldn't expect. And I think that's just, how you have to approach it. At the same time, I think you have to remember that it's all supposed to be fun, and not to take ourselves too seriously.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned about sequels, and this album coming up is Silver Scream 2. Why did you decide to go with the Silver Scream 2 kind of name rather than having it as a standalone album with its own title?
Well, we have a subtitle, Welcome to Horrorwood.
Yeah.
So Silver Scream 2, Welcome to Horrorwood. But for me, it's tipping our hat to the world of horror franchises. And that's just something that I've always been so enamored with from a young age. I remember, seeing Halloween and Friday the 13th and Scream, and being so excited to stand in line, or for those movies that were before my time, go and rent them on VHS for the part 2 and part 3, part 4. So I think for me, it's more just tipping our hat to that world of franchise and movie building, and kind of looking at Ice Nine Kills and the Silver Scream as more of a kind of a movie franchise than necessarily just a band.
Right.
So yeah, I think that was the thought process behind it.
And talking about horror movies, what horror movies would you say the sequel was better than the original?
Man, there's so many that it's hard for me in terms of saying which movie from a franchise I like better, but I will say that I think like Friday the 13th Part 2 definitely lives up to the original. It's the first time you get like adult Jason, and I think it might even be scarier than the first one. But I love Halloween 2. It's not, to me, it's not as much of a classic as the original, just because inherently it is Part 2. But there are plenty of movies in the horror world where I love the sequel. So that's just a couple of them. But yeah, then also, it's kind of funny. Like if our second album isn't as good as the first one, I could be like, the sequel's never supposed to be as good as the first. It was intentional.
Excellent forward planning. Well, I don't think it's going to be. So I want to take you back to when you first discovered music. Can you remember an album or a band that you became your own rather than just what you'd been listening to in the background or what your parents were playing?
I think for me, the first band that did that was Nirvana. That was like the first band I became obsessive over when I was very young. So probably like 7 or 8 years old. And that was the first time I was trying to collect bootleg copies of shows and as much merchandise I could find, and rare B-sides. Yeah, it was definitely Nirvana. And I just, that made me want to pick up a guitar. I wanted to be a musician from the first moment I heard that band.
And did you get a guitar around that age, or was it
later
later on?
That's when I started playing guitar, and guitar's always been my first instrument, still to this day, how I write most of the songs. And my parents were nice enough to let me explore that, and bought me guitars and bought me amps, and would constantly take me to Guitar Center or whatever local music shop to let me play around in different guitars. And yeah, that's really where the onset of my love of music came from.
And what was the first band you actually went to see live?
The first concert I ever saw, I think, was there are two that were around the same time. One was Smashing Pumpkins, while they were still touring on Melancholy, which was amazing, so young, and my parents took me there. And then Silverchair in a band called Local H. I love Silverchair because I think what got me into them was that they reminded me of Nirvana. And I think I saw them when they were supporting their album that just came out called Freak Show. And yeah, I still love all those bands.
And you keep up with new music now? Are you always paying attention to what's coming up?
Not so much. Not because I necessarily don't want to. It's just that I I try not to be influenced by too much modern stuff, just because I don't really want us to sound like the bands that are coming out with us.
Right.
But I do think it's important to have people on your team or other people that co-write with you or your producer that have their ear to the streets in terms of modern sounding production and stuff like that. But for me, I like to kind of stick to the old stuff that I grew up listening to, like punk bands from like the Epitaph Records scene, um, and a lot of soundtracks, a lot of composers from some of my favorite films. Obviously like Elfman, but like also like Marco Beltrami, who did the Scream franchise, and
Yeah.
Harry Manfredini, who did the Friday the 13th, and musical theater stuff that I still love to this day, like Les Mis and Phantom.
Oh, wow. So you definitely like the drama.
Yeah, for sure. That's how I like to keep it.
Nice. And like you say that you like to listen to a lot of classic albums from your past. Is there one album that stands out that you think you've listened to more than anything else in your life?
Oh man, I don't know if I can pinpoint it to just one album. I've always been a big Goldfinger fan. Like I love the energy from that self-titled record. And that was another band that made me want to write my own songs and sort of capture that kinetic energy that can be hard to capture. So I'd say Goldfinger, self-titled.
That's cool one. So when you're on tour now, you're finally back out on tour. We're in Montreal. You're going to be here in December, and the show's already sold out, and it's in a great venue. So that's going to be an amazing night. What is it that when you come off stage at the end of the night, you think that show could not have gone any better? What makes the perfect show for you?
For me, just making sure everyone in the crowd is feeling it, constantly moving around, constantly singing. Because if the kids had a good show, then I did too, obviously it's like, we're a very perfectionist oriented band. So it's like, oh, did we forget that lyric, or was that harmony flat or something? But at the end of the day, it's like in a live environment, the most important thing is that the crowd is connected with you. And as long as I feel that energy, then it went well,
Yeah, thanks for your time. I've enjoyed our little chat, and we'll see you soon.
Definitely, my man. I'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks, Spencer. You take care. Have a good one today.